Joining me now for an exclusive interview, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes. Chairman, good to see you tonight. Thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
I want to start first with the questions, very simple question and answers that you requested from James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, and John Brennan, the head of the CIA at the time of the Obama administration before the changing of the guard at the White House. Did you get any answers from them to the questions? And remind everybody what you wanted to know.
So what we did is a couple of weeks ago, we sent out to about a dozen people. We have another dozen people that are on the list, so we'll probably end up being about 24 folks that are going to get this questionnaire. The questionnaire really asks some simple questions. When did you know the Democrats paid for the dossier, and who did you tell? There's 10 questions in all, but that's the bottom line. Thankfully, we have received, most of the people have responded, getting the information back to us promptly and on time. There are a few people who have asked for an additional week, which we have went ahead and granted that time. There are a few people, though, that are not responding. They seem to have went dark. However, if they do not respond here shortly, they will be getting subpoenaed to appear before Congress to be treated with a deposition.
And did John Brennan and James Clapper respond to your questions?
Yes, they did.
And what were their responses about when they knew and what they knew?
Well, one of the things is as we continue to do this, Martha, I hope you understand, is that we have to compile all of this. We have to check it with their past testimony. We have to talk about it amongst our committee members. So I'm not dodging the question. But I just don't think it would be appropriate to say anything other than the fact that they did cooperate, they did answer all the questions.
Well, let me ask you this, because you, of course, remember Trey Gowdy asking John Brennan when he first learned about the dossier and who had paid for it. He said he didn't know who had paid for it. Is there anything in his response to you that contradicts that?
Well, I think the interesting thing, just going back to public statements that were made about that, is that John Brennan recently let out that he had heard from folks in the press questions about the dossier. Anything further than that, we're going to have to wait until the appropriate time to talk about what the answers are.
All right. Just to go to this New Yorker piece, which is extensive, by Jane Mayer. And in the story, it says that President Obama was sent a, quote, intelligence bombshell by the CIA in August, and that would be John Brennan, of course, saying that the Russians and Putin himself are directly involved in a cyber campaign against our elections. You know, so what was the crux of that information? Because it says that it came from the head of the UK intelligence arm, Robert Hannigan, and that it included a stream of illicit communications between the Trump team in Moscow that they had intercepted. We still haven't seen the information that was in any of that, have we?
No, and I would also make sure your viewers know that the New Yorker is known as a left-wing magazine. They've gotten a lot of things wrong. They refuse to make retractions when they do get things wrong. The main takeaway that I would take from this is that stating the obvious that the Russians are trying to interfere with our elections, that was myself and Republicans who warned of that way before the election. So we knew the Russians, what they were up to. But this is nothing new, and that's why people are going a little bit overboard with this, and they're taking things totally out of context. The Russians had an operation against us, but they've always had an operation against the United States of America, going back for many, many years and many elections. So the one thing that I took from the New Yorker piece today, and I haven't been able to get through the whole thing because it's so long, and you have to kind of wind your way through it, so to speak, but I just think this is just more evidence about how dirty this dossier is. So, look, my guess is that this is a rehabilitation project to rehabilitate Christopher Steele, who we know was supposedly working with Russians to get information. And this is what continues to perplex me. We know exactly who was getting information from the Russians. It was the Hillary Clinton campaign where they were getting information from the Russians, dirt on Trump to use in a campaign. That's the very thing that for a year and a half We've been trying to investigate on whether or not the Trump campaign was trying to get dirt against Hillary Clinton on from the Russians. We have no evidence of that. But yet here we have another example, even if the story's not completely accurate, we know that the Democrats were trying to get information from Russians to use against the Trump campaign.
Yeah, in terms of the spreading of the information that was in the dossier, there's a discussion about a meeting in the summer that Christopher Steele had with a number of national security reporters, and the author of this piece says, yes, I was among them. So he's out there. He's been paid by, through Coy Perkins, by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. But so he is out there spreading this information to these reporters, and John Brennan is not aware of who paid for the dossier at that point, because he says he learned about it in press circles.
Yeah, right. He did say that early on, but I think this is just more of an example of how outrageous the press coverage of this has become. Right. So many people in the press, not just this writer that wrote this piece today, many writers were briefed by Christopher Steele. Many of them had the dossier way before the election.
Right.
The dossier on the face of it is ridiculous. I mean, this is something that said that they were going to give some guy, Carter Page was going to get 20% of Gazprom, which would be billions and billions of dollars. If the FBI really believed that, we've got a bigger problem in the FBI with just basic credibility.
All right, let me ask you this, because Sam Nunberg, I'm sure you've seen the headlines today, and we're going to talk about this more in just a moment. He says, yes, he's sure, actually, that Carter Page was engaging in some kind of relationship with the Russians, some kind of collusion with the Russians. Your thoughts on that?
Well, this is the first I've heard of that. It sounds a little wild to me. I don't think there's any. Carter Page will tell you himself that he was talking to Russians. He's a Putin apologist. We don't disagree. We don't agree with anything that Carter Page believes. At least Republicans in the House don't. We've long been on record about making any apologies for Putin. We know that Putin's up to bad things, and we know that Carter Page is an apologist for Putin. But I don't know that there's anything earth-shattering there.
All right, before I let you go, the discussion today that there's $120 million that's supposed to be spent on making sure that the Russians can't be deeply involved in the midterm elections and elections going forward, that money hasn't been spent. The accusation that the Trump administration is not taking this whole thing seriously when it comes to elections going forward. What do you say to that?
Well, I'll say two things. One, there were millions and millions of dollars that went unspent by our intelligence agencies during the Obama administration, even as they were being warned by myself and others back in 2014, 15, and 16. Unspent. So this coming out of the State Department about money, I mean, I don't know. Look, if you're going to go against the Russians, against a foreign adversary, the first thing you do is don't talk about it.
All right. I mean, if you were concerned that they weren't spending the money then, are you concerned that they're not spending the money now?
Well, I know for a fact that our intelligence agencies, at least what we control, they are spending the money.
Okay. Good to see you tonight, Chairman. And as you continue to go through that information and get your questions and answers back, I hope you'll join us again and talk about it some more.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.